There was no collusion with Russia. There was a complete and total exoneration.
The Attorney General's comments make it clear that Congress must step in to get the truth.
I hope this is something that the entire American public can read.
I don't care what side of the aisle you are, Republican, Democrat, Green Party, this is a good day for America.
It is Monday, March 25th, and this is a Fox News alert for you. No collusion and no obstruction of justice. Attorney General William Barr stunning Congress with his summary of the Mueller report. Will this be enough for Democrats to stop waging war on the president? And how will it impact the 2020 race? We have live team coverage and some analysis for you. Coming up, Fox and Friends First starts right now. Washington, D.C., where the lights are on. It was a busy one over the weekend. Wow, lots of things happening on Capitol Hill. We have it all covered for you. Good morning. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning. I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much, as always, for starting your day and your week with us. Let's get right to that Fox News alert for you, though. The Trump administration declaring victory after the Mueller report finds no collusion with Russia. But Democrats, as many would imagine, are already pushing back, saying that the special counsel's report does not fully exonerate the president. Doug Luzader is live in Washington for us, where the fight is just beginning, possibly. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning. The president learned about the results of the report while he was in Florida this weekend. This was his reaction as he headed back here to Washington.
There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction. It was a complete and total exoneration. It's a shame that our country had to go through this. To be honest, it's a shame that your president has had to go through this. This was an illegal takedown that failed. And hopefully somebody's going to be looking at the other side.
Now, there are two big takeaways here, at least according to the summation of the Mueller report that the Attorney General put together. First, and on this point, the summary is pretty emphatic. The special counsel's investigation did not find the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Now, on the question as to whether the president obstructed justice, the Mueller report apparently presents arguments on both sides, but doesn't make a firm determination. The special counsel, therefore, did not draw a conclusion one way or the other as to whether the examined conduct constituted obstruction. And Democrats are really focusing on that point, especially after Attorney General William Barr determined that there was not enough evidence to make an obstruction case.
This report does not amount to a so-called total exoneration. The special counsel spent 22 months uncovering evidence of obstruction and other misconduct. Attorney General Barr made a decision about that evidence in under 48 hours. His conclusions raise more questions than the answer.
Now, a number of Democrats are calling for the full report to be released. It looks like that's going to happen. I mean, there will obviously be some redactions, but it looks like that will eventually happen. Meantime, some Democrats are calling for Attorney General William Barr to testify here on Capitol Hill. Heather.
All right. Thank you very much, Doug. Lots more to come on this. Thank you. Well, the Trump administration celebrating the Mueller report's findings. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders tweeting, a great day for America and for President Trump. After 2 years of wild anti-Trump hysteria, the president and his millions of supporters have been completely vindicated. Well, Counselor Kellyanne Conway tweeting, today you won the 2016 election all over again and got a gift for the 2020 election. They'll never get you because they'll never get you. And the Trump campaign is using the report to call out Democrats in a brand new campaign ad. Look.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
We saw strong evidence of collusion.
Well, we know there was collusion with people in the campaign.
Democrats holding out hope of finding the president guilty of obstruction. In a joint statement, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer claiming Attorney General William Barr is not a neutral observer. and they claim that his summary raises as many questions as it answers. The Democratic leader saying, quote, the fact that Special Counsel Mueller's report does not exonerate the president on a charge as serious as obstruction of justice demonstrates how urgent it is that the full report and underlying documentation be made public without any further delay. Well, some say the outcome of special counsel investigation, or the special counsel's investigation, begs the question, why was it even started in the first place? Todd Pyro is here to break down the timeline of the Russia probe. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning to you, Heather. So just how did we get here? Here are some of the key dates in a saga filled with them. And again, these are just the highlights. There are a lot more we could have put in here. Starting in 2017, January 10th, BuzzFeed publishes the unverified and since discredited Russian dossier alleging that Russia has compromising information on President Trump. March 4th, President Trump asserts that Trump Tower was wiretapped before Election Day by the Obama administration. May 17th, Rod Rosenstein announces Robert Mueller's appointment as special counsel on Russian election interference, a move that comes almost immediately after Trump fires James Comey as FBI director. June 14th, the Washington Post reports that Mueller is investigating Trump for possible obstruction of justice after Comey testified that the president asked him. First indictment results in 12 counts against Paul Manafort, the former Trump campaign chair, including conspiracy, tax fraud, and money laundering. December 1, Flynn pleads guilty to lying and agrees to cooperate. Now to 2018, February 16th, Mueller indicts 13 Russians and 3 Russian entities on charges of interfering in the 2016 election. April 9th, the feds raid the apartment, hotel, and office of Michael Cohen, Trump's personal lawyer. July 13th, Mueller indicts 12 Russians in the 2016 DNC hack, accusing them of conspiring to interfere in the presidential race. September 7th, George Papadopoulos sentenced to 14 days in prison. September 14th, Manafort pleads guilty and agrees to cooperate. November 20th, Trump submits written answers to Mueller, avoiding an in-person sit-down. Then, this year, January 25th, Roger Stone, an informal advisor to Trump's presidential campaign, is indicted on charges of obstruction, false statements, and witness tampering. And then on Friday, Heather, as we know, Mueller delivers his report to the DOJ, ending the investigation.
So then the next thing on the timeline, when will we get a copy of the full report, if and when?
And who knows? You know, like I made this point yesterday on Twitter. Not a lot of lawyers are going to be able to go through 675 pages and make sure the confidential stuff is all removed over the course of 48 hours. You can summarize it like Barr did, but to go through and make sure nothing that is confidential or could jeopardize our country's security is released, that takes time.
Yeah, or they just block out entire pages, which we've seen them do before. Thank you so much, Todd.
No problem.
Well, so let's bring in constitutional law attorney and former prosecutor Jenna Ellis now to join us to talk a little bit more about the findings and Barr's summary. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Heather. Always great to see you.
So what are your initial thoughts as you watched all of this unfold yesterday?
Yeah, well, this is an absolute and complete total vindication for the president. And regardless of what the leftist mainstream media is reporting, the obstruction of justice question is completely closed. What you're not seeing reported is the full sentence and the full scope of that page to Barr's letter. Because remember, it says that the evidence developed during the special counsel's investigation is not sufficient to establish obstruction of justice. What most mainstream media outlets are reporting is simply cutting off that sentence to say the special counsel's investigation was not sufficient. So now they're calling for even more investigation, where Mueller has, the almost 3,000 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, 22 months. This was fully sufficient. And so the obstruction of justice question absolutely is closed. And American people, Heather, regardless of whether you're an R or a D, should be celebrating the fact that our president, regardless of who voted for Donald Trump and who didn't, he is our president, and he was completely honorable throughout his campaign and throughout his tenure in the White House.
But
that's
what a
the
lot of
line.
Democrats are saying now, and some expected this to happen in terms of Barr, they're saying, this summary was written by Barr and Rosenstein, who were both appointed by President Trump. Here's what Pelosi and Schumer had to say, their statement on it. Given Mr. Barr's public record of bias against the special counsel's inquiry, he's not a neutral observer and is not in a position to make objective determinations about the report. And then add to that, they're saying that he and Rosenstein were both appointed by President Trump. So what about that?
Well, that's just simply not factually accurate. And the Attorney General has to be an unbiased party. And let's remember, these are the same Democrats who were claiming that Loretta Lynch as well as Eric Holder were unbiased observers. So they can't claim that one Attorney General is and another Attorney General isn't just based on the party of the president that appointed them. So that's one thing. But then second, let's remember that Barr has a significant history here. Mm-hmm. He was part of the Bush administration. He is not new to the ballgame, but every time that a prosecutor looks at the evidence, it's not just their opinion about it. They have to look and make a legal conclusion and determination. That's what Barr did, and his summary was thorough. It was incredibly transparent, and it also just summarized what is going to be coming out later in the report. So if there are discrepancies, we, the American public, will know that, so he's going to be careful.
And let's talk about that. What could be coming up? A lot of folks now questioning President Obama's role in this, Hillary Clinton's role in this. Listen to this exchange, which was back in January. Listen to this.
Do you promise me as Attorney General, if you get this job, to look in to see what happened in 2016?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
How do these statements sit with you?
I was shocked when I saw them.
So should the Obama administration, should Hillary Clinton now both be investigated in terms of what led up to this investigation of the president to begin with?
Absolutely. And, a lot of us who are conservatives and who understand that the rule of law and equal protection of the law and equal justice under the law means that everyone who is potentially involved should be investigated. We've been calling for an investigation of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and anyone else on the Democratic side since the very beginning. This has been a one-sided investigation, and the president was absolutely right in his remarks yesterday. So, of course, the American public need to know who else was responsible for this. Was there any collusion on the part of the Democrats? Mm-hmm. Of course that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, that's why a lot of folks, Republicans, there really doesn't seem to be a lot of controversy. They do agree as well that the Mueller report should be released, but they're also calling for all of the material leading up to this investigation, that to be released as well. So we'll see what happens. Jenna Ellis, thank you so much for joining us. Busy day.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks. Well, Americans across the country are weighing in on the Mueller report. Hashtag release the full report is one of the top trending topics on Twitter. One person writing, looks to me like we all agree. Barr, you might want to look at this hashtag, release the full report. Another tweets, surely it will get leaked sooner than later, so you might as well hashtag release the full report. So what do you think? Should the report be made public? Why or why not? Leave us a comment on our Fox and Friends First Facebook page, and we'll share them a little bit later. Well, the time now is about 15 minutes after the top of the hour. No collusion. None. Did Democrats just hand the president a 2020 win? Our next guest, a Republican strategist, says it's full steam ahead for the president's agenda.
We have a lot of questions that are not answered in this letter.
They don't have a single full sentence quoting the Mueller report at all.
With the left-leaning media melting down why they just can't come to terms with the no collusion headline.
The evidence is pretty clear that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
We saw strong evidence of collusion.
Well, we know there was collusion with people in the campaign.
Well, President Trump's re-election campaign already pouncing on Robert Mueller's report, releasing that video, slamming Democrats for their claims about collusion. So are they helping his bid for re-election? Here to discuss is GOP strategist Chris Nywame. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good with you, Heather.
So, as with everyone, I just want to begin with your overall thoughts about what transpired yesterday.
Well, I don't know if we need mayonnaise or mustard on the nothing burger. I think either will do. There was nothing there. The Democrats don't have a backup plan. This is, it's good news to obviously hear this in general, but they just don't have a plan for the president. He's been very successful. He has a strong record, and so now they're kind of left scratching their heads.
Yeah, it seems like their plan is to still continue with additional investigations, though. Is that a wise move?
They're desperate. They have to do that. They want to dog him down. That's what they're going to try to do to the House. But I think that the president's going to stick to the agenda, be consistent. And the Democrats really have to try to figure out something new here.
Yeah, we have this one portion that we wanted to pull out from the Attorney General's letter summarizing the Mueller investigation yesterday. He said the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts. And it goes on to say, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign.
Well, I think foreign powers are always trying to interfere. We've seen that with China. It's what they do. They continue to be consistent about that. But there hasn't been, I mean, there was no collusion between Democrats and middle-class voters. And that's really what happened. It's an electoral problem, and they're going to continue to struggle with that. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
So do you think that this will obviously benefit the president moving forward?
I do. His narrative has been consistent, and to be fair, the president was opposed by everyone, the media establishment, the Democrats, Republicans, and he was able to be successful. I think it's his connection with voters and his ability to communicate directly to them without the media establishment.
And in terms of whether Democrats accept these conclusions, and if the report, is made public, would it be wise for them to do so? Will it harm them if they decide they're not going to accept this?
Not necessarily, but it's just next steps. I mean, they've really been consistent about trying to push this up and draw attention to it, but there's just not anything there. So, I mean, they should try to focus on an agenda that moves them back to the center, because Democrats I know that are in the center don't want the party going as far left as they have, and that's the real struggle they have now. They have a political problem.
At this point, they're already trying to dismiss the summary by the Attorney General, saying that both, as we just mentioned, both he and Rosenstein were appointed by President Trump. Now they have this opportunity. They're saying, let's just release the report, and they're trying to act like that's a partisan issue as well, where it doesn't really appear to be. Do you think that the report should be released?
Not necessarily. No, I mean, I don't think there's not much there. I mean, I think that's how under the Obama administration we saw the same thing with investigations and partisanship. There's always going to be politics in government to a certain extent, but I don't think it's necessary, and I think we're ready to move on from this.
All right, we will see if anyone agrees with you. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it. All right, and we will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Fox and Friends. First, some headlines for you now. A rocket attack forcing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to cut his U.S. trip short. Netanyahu vowing to retaliate against the strike that destroyed a home and wounded 7 people north of Tel Aviv. The rocket came from the Gaza Strip, but so far no group has claimed responsibility. Netanyahu is in D.C. today for a meeting with President Trump, where the president will formally recognize Israeli control over the Golan Heights. Well, Boeing taking steps towards getting the 737 MAX 8 back in the air. Planes were grounded, as you'll recall, all around the world in the wake of 2 deadly crashes. 3 American pilots now testing software changes on flight simulators following a New York Times report claiming that Boeing rushed engineers to design the planes at twice the normal pace. Well, the issue is forcing American Airlines to cancel about 90 flights a day through April 24th. And this was really remarkable. Viking Cruise Line working to send passengers home after a near disaster at sea. The ship reaching port in Norway following hours of chaos when its engines failed during a storm. Watch. Unreal. Nearly 500 passengers airlifted off that cruise ship before the ship restarted its engines. At least 20 passengers were injured in all that. And the first wave of defendants accused in a massive national college admissions scandal will face a judge today. At least 12 of the 50 people charged are expected in a Boston courtroom for paying and accepting bribes worth millions of dollars. Now, 7 of the 9 colleges, or the college coaches involved, will be present, including fired legendary USC water polo coach Jovan Vavitch. So we'll stay on top of that. Well, to March Madness, though, how about this? Some good news. Oregon heading to the Sweet 16 after blowing out UC Irvine. The Ducks besting the Anteaters 73-54. And then top-seeded Duke surviving a scare from Central Florida in the final seconds.
That are not answered in this letter.
They don't have a single full sentence quoting the Mueller report at all.
So what will it take for them to come to terms with the no collusion headline? And why did it all begin in the first place? President Trump now calling for the investigators to be investigated. Emily Compagno, a former federal attorney, joins us live to weigh in. Well, President Trump declaring victory after Attorney General William Barr released his initial review of the Mueller report.
There There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction. It was a complete and total exoneration. This was an illegal takedown that failed. And hopefully somebody's going to be looking at the other side.
The report also revealing that there's not enough evidence to find the president obstructed justice. But it's not enough for Democrats. They want the full report released and Barr to testify on Capitol Hill.
Attorney General Barr made a decision about that evidence in under 48 hours. His conclusions raise more questions than the answer.
Well, findings of no collusion triggering a media meltdown. Look at this.
There is a very big difference between trying to get enough evidence for a criminal charge, president or not, and making a political determination on Capitol Hill.
So we have a lot of questions that are not answered in this letter.
In this summary from Barr tonight, the clear outlines of a new fight from Donald Trump's handpicked attorney general. The other key thing to know is that these 4 pages that Barr wrote, they don't have a single full sentence quoting the Mueller report at all.
Politically, the toothpaste is already out of the tube, as they say.
Yeah.
So, you know, this isn't getting resolved in this country until November 2020.
Well, the media grasping for a different outcome, claiming that there's still smoke when it comes to possible obstruction. Aisha Husney is here with that. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, a lot going on. We're talking about 2 years, $25 million, and 500 witnesses. If you thought the Mueller report would have put an end to all the speculation, think again. The mainstream news media trying to come to terms now with the no collusion headline. Some still looking for smoke out there, now suggesting it's time for the Democrat-controlled House to decide whether or not the president obstructed justice and if impeachment is still on the table here. But not everybody is buying this. Rolling Stone contributor Matt Taibbi calling the Mueller report a, quote, death blow for the reputation of American news media, and then commenting on just how many Americans have now lost trust in the media. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders had a few words to say about that. Take a look at this. She tweeted this out. Democrats and their liberal media allies for 2 years slandered President Trump for, quote, conspiring with Russia. It was all a malicious, preposterous lie given wall-to-wall media coverage despite zero evidence. This should never again happen to an American president.
I do think there has to be an overall look at the media, at the Democrat Party, at the leaders in the Democrat Party. Why did they continue to try and delegitimize this president? Why do we even have to have this investigation for 2 years based on a fake dossier paid by the DNC and Hillary Clinton? It's shameful. It's bad for our democracy.
Okay, so the question now, will there be any apologies, any accountability? Well, Georgia Congressman Doug Collins is now calling on House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff to apologize after Schiff repeatedly claimed there is evidence of collusion. He's not backing down, though, telling ABC News recently there's, quote, still significant evidence of collusion despite the report finding otherwise. Heather?
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Much more to come on this. Well, throughout the day and the week, as President Trump calls for a probe into why Mueller was appointed at all, is it time to investigate the investigators? Here now to weigh in is attorney and Fox News contributor Emily Compagnon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Heather. Thank you.
So these calls going out to investigate the investigators, should that happen, and how could that happen?
Right. I think it's a viable course of action, right? There's a lot of anger, rightly so, on the right at this point and on behalf of the president, who feels that he was the result, obviously, the target of 2 years of an incredible investigation with an overwhelming amount of resources deployed toward it to the tune of our tax dollars. So that would look in the form, note that the IG is presently continuing his investigation, so look for a future report. It could also be undergone by some type of independent panel, right? So some type of totally independent group of people appointed by the DOJ that then goes out and investigates all of the underlying events that occurred that haven't been covered by the mainstream media as to why exactly the dossier was accepted and all of the information passed back and forth between the then FBI and certain people, that some of which are still employed at the DOJ.
Right, and that wouldn't only involve the FBI. It would involve potentially Hillary Clinton, her campaign, the Obama administration, how they responded to what they knew and when. Here's what Rudy Giuliani had to say. He said there has to be a full and complete investigation with at least as much enthusiasm as this one to figure out where did this charge emanate, who started it, and who paid for it. So what would be the repercussions for any of those individuals involved?
All of the repercussions potentially that we saw here, right? There, at this point, is a substantial amount of indicators toward everything from bias to fraud to downright, there's leaks to the press, there's inappropriate use of resources, there's a whole host of things that we only saw touched on this point. And I think there's a level of national fatigue that likely is occurring right now with the amount of resources that have gone toward these investigations. But really, it shouldn't be cut off if at this point there is so much more to investigate, which it looks like there is.
Yeah.
And especially in this report, the immediate knee-jerk reaction by those on the right, including, as we heard quoted a few minutes ago, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, it's not appropriate at a minimum for him to be discussing and citing what he called compelling and incriminating evidence that still exists if after a 2-year investigation there wasn't any such evidence that exists. Those kinds of comments, they need to be put to rest, and the only way that it can, frankly, would be another independent investigation.
Yeah, at another cost. I mean, we have this breakdown we can pull up for people just to bring it home for you. This was 674 days, 19 lawyers, 40 FBI agents, $25.2 million in cost, 37 indictments, but 0 collusion indictments. So what we initially began to look for, 0, none of that.
Exactly. And, for those that are calling for, well, okay, so this needs to happen now, and this testimony, and this, that's really undermined the extent of that investigation, throughout which so many on the left hung their hat on its relevance, its importance. They frankly canonized Mueller at times, right? And so it kind of belies the fact that, well, what is everyone waiting for on the left then? Clearly, they're not going to be satisfied until a certain outcome is reached that up until now, the evidence has not supported.
Emily,
and so it kind of belies the fact that it's partisan. Sorry,
I did want to ask you this one quick thing before we run out of time, because I'm not really clear on this. The former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, just last month, he talked about this counterintelligence investigation that was launched based on the president's actions. Among those actions, asking James Comey to discontinue the investigation into Michael Flynn. What about the counterintelligence investigation? Is that now wrapped up and done? Will that continue?
It seems to me it is. Note that there are still ongoing investigations that were referred to the Southern District of New York, so we don't know what's going on with that yet. So that remains to be seen if there are other things that are being developed. Note that it's referenced as well in AG Barr's report, where he says that's part of what would be redacted in the eventual the Mueller report that's given to Congress or released to the public. So notwithstanding that, the answer, in my opinion, would be yes. Reminder, it's a $12 billion industry, this digital espionage. So, and the majority of those indicted, as we know, were Russian nationals. So certainly moving forward, not only do we know thus far that there's been no evidence towards an underlying criminal activity the president was engaged in, which went to his intent, that then AG Barr, along with Rod Rosenstein, referenced as, that's why we declined to prosecute obstruction of justice. All of the required elements, the nexus into an underlying crime, criminal intent, etc., none of that was there, and therefore that's why we're not proceeding. So that goes in, that ties in.
So we will see. That's what a lot of folks now are starting to talk about as well, the counterintelligence investigation. Thank you, Emily. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour. 2020 candidates like Beto O'Rourke using the Mueller findings as fodder on the campaign trail.
Our democracy was attacked by a foreign power, and I think we've got to see if it was also attacked from within by somebody who sought to assume power.
How other big names in the crowded Democratic field are responding. So how is James Comey handling the no collusion news? Speaking of James Comey, apparently he's taken a hike. Cardi Shimkus is here next with the social media reaction. Welcome back. You're watching Fox and Friends First. Despite Robert Mueller's finding of collusion, no collusion, let me correct myself, finding of no collusion, 2020 Democratic hopefuls are refusing to accept it.
The Mueller report must be made public.
I don't want a summary of the report. I want the whole damn report.
Our democracy was attacked by a foreign power, and I think we've got to see if it was also attacked from within by somebody who sought to assume power.
Well, Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7. Sirius XM 115 is here with the online reaction. A lot of it yesterday.
Yeah, so while President Trump has declared complete and total exoneration, Democrats are hoping that the devil is in the details. They are demanding the full report be released. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeting, Congress voted 420-0 to release the full Mueller report, not a summary from his hand-picked Attorney General A.G. Barr. Make the full report public immediately. Both Senator Warren and Senator Kamala Harris emphasizing the fact that William Barr was handpicked by the president, a sign that his credibility may be called into question. Quote, the Mueller report needs to be made public. The underlying investigative materials should be handed over to Congress, and Barr must testify. That is what transparency looks like. A short letter from Trump's handpicked Attorney General is not sufficient. In New Jersey, Senator Cory Booker also chiming in with a tweet saying the American public deserves the full report and findings from the Mueller investigation immediately, not just the in-house summary from a Trump administration official. Now, while Democrats and Republicans disagree on so much these days, they do agree on this because President Trump has, of course, said that he thinks the full report should be released as well.
It's funny, Democrats trying to use it and say that it's a partisan issue when it's not a partisan issue right now.
Everybody's saying the same thing.
But some
Everybody wants the full report.
Yeah. Also saying, though, release all the documentation and material leading up to the investigation and the Mueller investigation to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about James Comey because he obviously was involved in a lot of this.
Sure was. So shortly after Barr released his summary of the investigation, former FBI Director James Comey responded with this picture, seemingly responded with this photo that shows him looking up at the sky while standing in a forest of tall trees. He included the caption, so many questions. Well, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham responded with a clear sign that Republicans are interested in investigating how the Russia probe got started. He said, could not agree more. See you soon. So could he be making his way to Capitol Hill pretty soon? And then a reporter, National Review reporter Jim Garrity also responded saying, someone is lost in the woods.
Yeah.
Maybe a little jab at the whole Hillary Clinton
Definitely look
situation.
online because the responses to that were amazing. And with such a weird tweet for him to send out. But
yeah, that's
not the first weird tweet he
So
sent
it seems like Democrats are angry that this, report found no collusion. Republicans are, and Trump is also mad, saying, you put me through 2 years of this for nothing.
Right. Taxpayers should be angry because the cost of everything involved. I like Greg Gutfeld's response to that, to the James Comey tweet. He said, looking for Hillary. I like that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, the time now is about 15 minutes until the top of the hour. And House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff has insisted that there's evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, despite having nothing to show.
Have Democrats found any evidence of collusion?
Yes, we have. There's clear evidence on the issue of collusion. There's also abundant circumstantial evidence.
So now that the Mueller findings appear to have blown up in his face, should Schiff step down? Our political panel up next to debate.
There is significant evidence of collusion, and we've set that out time and time again. There's a difference between compelling evidence of collusion and whether the special counsel concludes that he can prove beyond a reasonable doubt the criminal charge of conspiracy.
House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff insisting that there is proof of collusion between the president's campaign and Russia. But now that we see the Mueller report disagrees, should he step down as head of the committee? Here now to debate it is former Obama administration official Roger Fisk and Independent Women's Forum fellow Beverly Hallberg. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Going to be a very busy day with lots of responses to the Mueller report and A.G. Barr's summary itself. Beverly, I'll begin with you. What do you think about that in terms of Schiff? Should he step down? He's still insisting that there is collusion.
Well, no Democrat is going to ask him to step down. I think what we should push for, and we're hearing prominent Republicans do this, is ask at least for an apology. When you play those clips back to back, it shows how much, not just an assumption that there was some type of collusion between Trump and Russia, but coming out and saying there's significant evidence. What we know from this Mueller report is that's not the case. So I think there's a serious expectations issue with Adam Schiff. And what I would hope moving forward is that he's more careful with his words. But unfortunately,
unfortunately, I think for America, what we're going to see is that Democrats, including Adam Schiff, are going to continue to go after Trump. I think we can expect to see more of this in other areas, not revolving around collusion.
And Roger, what are your thoughts?
Good morning. It's great to be here with you and Beverly. It's interesting to hear the call for apologies. I think back to where this all started. And I've said all along we need to see the report, and I hold to that to this day. We actually need to see the report. We don't need to see a summary by the Attorney General, whose views on a lot of these matters were well known.
But Republicans are saying we should see the report as well.
I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm all for transparency and releasing the report, too.
Fantastic. A little bit of context, though, if we're talking about apologies, Vice President Pence went on Face the Nation in January of 2017 and said there were no contacts between the campaign and Russia. Now we know of about 115. The president campaigned saying he had no business deals in Russia. Now we know about the hotel. And while Vice President Pence was on Face the Nation, we know that the president was down the hall in the White House cutting checks for hush payments to a porn star. So this is not a profile in courage. So people that are spiking the football and calling this like the big win, I think are mistaken. This is a good day for the president. There's no way of getting around that. And then the other thing is how much of this AG's letter obfuscates some of the details of the report. I stick to my original point. I'll make all my judgments when the report comes out, and I'm glad that we're all in agreement on that.
You mentioned some of those indictments associated with this, 37 total, but none of those involved Russia collusion. Beverly?
Well, and I'm not surprised to hear what Roger is saying. I do agree, Roger, that we should see the full report. I know plenty of Democrats are saying that since William Barr is the one who released this letter, talking about the memo, they say he's a Trump appointee, so we do need to see the entire report. I agree with that. Let's see it. But at the same time, even hearing what Democrats are talking about today, you know that the issue with Trump isn't dead, because this is going to move into other areas, what his family dealings are, what his business dealings are, what his taxes are, and other issues that he has specifically in New York and some legal issues there. So I think what we're going to see up until 2020 is that while the Russian case, I believe, is settled at this point, the Democrats are going to do anything they can to embarrass Trump, partially because they dislike him very much, but also because they want to use this for their advantage in 2020.
And is that a wise move, Roger, in terms of Democrats? Because we already see the fatigue associated with this particular investigation. When you do poll after poll, you ask people, are you over it? Should it be wrapped up and finished? They say yes. But now we hear Democrats already yesterday coming out making pretty clear that they're going to continue this investigation of the president in other ways. Already, this investigation, the Mueller investigation, cost taxpayers $25.2 million. So we're going to do it all over again?
Well, $25 million pales compared to what the federal government spends with the president's trips to Mar-a-Lago, which I think the price tag is $60 million. When you say that the charges have nothing to do with Russia and nothing to do with collusion, it makes sense that a liar hires liars. So this is just a circle of liars. But you would think that, like, one would lie about a stock deal, one would lie about a real estate deal or whatever. They all lied about Russia. If there was nothing there, then why did Flynn lie about Russia? Why did Gates lie about Russia? All these things. So that's why I would counsel my friends across the aisle to not get ahead of themselves on this. There's a lot more to come out just within this report. But I agree with Beverly, and I've said all along, anyone running for office in 2020 needs to start with a blank piece of paper, lay out exactly what they want to do for their voters, and they have to make the basis of their campaign and their candidacy completely separate from Trump, collusion, Mueller report, etc.
Well, we will see if and when the Mueller report is actually released in its entirety, if that is good enough for Democrats moving forward. Roger, Beverly, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, you too. And we will be right back.